Start in another minute or so. May I request that apart from the dignitaries speaking at the moment, may I request everybody else to go on mute so that there are no technological challenges when we are streaming this event. Thank you, everybody. We will now start this book release event. Very good evening to all the honorable judges, distinguished guests, esteemed members of the bar, legal luminaries, and all those who have joined us for this momentous occasion. We are gathered here today to celebrate the release of a landmark book, 75 Years of the Constitution, Supreme Court's role in promoting constitutionalism, authored by Mr. V. Sudhish Pai and published by Oakbridge Publishing. My name is Priyanka Srivastav, and I'm honored to guide you through the proceedings this evening. We are privileged to have with us Honorable Mr. Justice M.N. Venkatachaliah, who will be presiding over the book release, Honorable Dr. Justice D.Y. Chandrachud, the chief guest for this evening, Honorable Mr. Justice R.V. Raveendran, and Mr. R. Venkataramani, our guests of honor today. Our guests really need no introduction. They are all legal luminaries, and it is our honor to have them with us today. We extend our warmest welcome to the guests and thank them for taking the time out to join us. To begin the proceedings, may I invite Mr. Shrish Chandra, Founder Director of Oakbridge Publishing, to deliver the welcome address.
Hi, thank you. Thank you, Priyanka. I hope I am audible, Priyanka.
Yes, you are.
Okay, thank you. Honorable Justice M.N. Venkatachaliah, Dr. Justice D.Y. Chandrachud, Mr. Justice R.V. Raveendran, Mr. R. Venkataramani, and our erudite author, Mr. V. Sudhish Pai, honorable judges, senior advocates, and advocates in the audience, ladies and gentlemen. A very good evening to you all. It is our proud privilege to be the publisher of the latest and timely title, 75 Years of the Constitution, Supreme Court's Role in Promoting Constitutionalism, authored by Mr. V. Sudhish Pai, and be a part of the release of this book in the presence of honorable judges and valued members of the legal fraternity. I thank all the dignitaries for gracing this occasion and their august presence. And I congratulate Mr. Pai on the release of his latest and a very interesting book presented in a unique style in many ways. What makes this occasion really momentous is the graceful presence of two former Chief Justices of India. Interestingly, the 25th Chief Justice of India, Mr. Justice Venkatachaliah, and the 50th Chief Justice of India, Dr. Justice Chandrachud. Isn't this a fortunate coincidence? I have had the privilege of meeting and interacting with these two towering personalities, thanks to Mr. Sudhish Pai and his books. There could not have been a better day to release such a timely volume on 75 years of Constitution, Supreme Court's role in promoting constitutionalism, because this was the day when Supreme Court sat for the first time in 1950. I believe stars are aligned to make this event very special in every way. My association with Mr. Pai goes back to 8 years, and we have had the privilege to be his publishing partners for 3 of his invaluable publications, one of which is a biography of the living legend, Mr. Justice M.N. Venkatachaliah himself. Mr. Pai is a rare fusion of knowledge, presentation, and language. It is a treat to read his books and articles, and a delight to hear him in person. Every time I have interacted with him, I have felt enriched during these conversations. His marvelous memory and ability to recall contextual anecdotes and link it with the present conversation is beyond compare. It was early 2024 when Mr. Pai broached the idea of penning down this book to mark the 75th year of Constitution of India and Supreme Court's role in promoting constitutionalism. And it did not take me more than a few seconds to express our willingness to partner with him on this project. As always, it has been a delight for all of us to work closely with Mr. Pai on this book, which traces the evolution of our Constitution, its features and provisions, and showcases the contribution of the Supreme Court to make the constitutional vision a reality. The author delves into the concepts of constitutional law, constitutional morality, and constitutionalism, while bringing this in the context of Constitution of India. The readers will find a careful, considered, and a critical appraisal of the cases that have shaped the constitutional principle that uphold our democracy to this day. As publishers, we get the opportunity to work with different authors from different segments, and we value each of these experiences. However, working with a scholarly author like Mr. Pai, who is full of ideas, is brave to experiment, is consultative, and keeps the entire team inspired, has been a great privilege for all of us at Oak Ridge. His deep knowledge of the domain, his clarity, his meticulousness, his articulation, his imagination, and his command over language is admirable. On a lighter note, Mr. Pai, who's blessed with abundant natural intelligence, has the blessing of the golden alphabets of the current times, AI2, in his surname. As a professional publisher, it is our endeavor to publish high quality works in varied areas. Our obsession with quality literature, scholarly authors, rigorous editorial processes, and high quality production standards has earned us the reputation of a worthy publishing outfit within a very short span of time. I hope the readers like this latest offer from Oak Ridge portfolio and derive value from this masterwork painstakingly put together by Mr. Pai. I once again thank our esteemed dignitaries and guests for making time to attend the release of the book despite their busy schedules. I hope everyone enjoys the event and derives value from the speeches of the dignitaries who are scheduled to speak today. I thank you all for a patient hearing and wish you all the best for the rest of the evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chandra. It is my pleasure to introduce our author for the evening, Senior Advocate Mr. V. Sudhish Pai. Mr. Pai is a distinguished lawyer, a jurist, and an acclaimed author specializing in constitutional law and administrative law, having been at the bar for over 40 years. He was visiting chair professor, Ashutosh Mukherjee Chair at the West Bengal National University of Juridical Sciences, Kolkata. He is a resource person at the National Judicial Academy, Bhopal, for continuing legal education for judges. His contribution to academics, particularly in the area of critical constitutional analysis, has been substantial and significant. The Supreme Court and the High Courts have quoted from his writings. Through his work, he has accentuated the true meaning of the bar as a learned profession. It is now my honor to invite the author, Mr. V. Sudhish Pai, to deliver the introductory address. Sir, over to you.
Thank you. Good evening to all. Revered Justice Venkatachaliah, esteemed Justice Dhananjay Chandrachud, esteemed Justice Raveendran, the Honorable Attorney General Shri Venkataramani, Honorable Judges, sitting and former learned members of the bar, all those who have joined online, and friends. This year, 2025, marks the 75 years of our Constitution, our Republic, and our Supreme Court. Indeed, today happens to be the 75th anniversary of the inaugural sitting of the Supreme Court, held with all solemnity and grandeur on Saturday, the 28th of January, 1950. And just a couple of hours ago, we had a ceremonial sitting of the Supreme Court to commemorate that occasion. This Jubilee is an occasion for celebration, for reflection, and for introspection. It's appropriate to ponder over what has been and what should be, and to where we are heading. We are reminded of the great Justice Holmes, who, when he could not find his rail ticket and the conductor was patronizing, responded to the conductor, "The question is not, where is my ticket? The question is, where am I going?" One only hopes this statement does not have a familiar ring for us in contemporary times. Chief Justice Marshall famously said, "A constitution is framed for ages to come and designed to attain immortality as nearly as human institutions can. Its course, of course, is not always tranquil." In an interesting study, three scholars, Alkins, Ginsberg, and Melton, in their book, The Endurance of National Constitutions, put the average life of a written constitution at 19. Only a handful last longer than 50. The factors which help a constitution endure have been identified by them as specificity of its provisions, flexibility of the amending process, and inclusiveness. And I think we may legitimately add a robust judicial process. It was said of Gurudev Raveendran Tagore that he was the most splendid coral island in the stream of our literature, rather being in the stream and part of it. So also our constitution stands out amidst the encircling gloom of neighboring states, surrounded by countries which are like deserts where constitutions have come and gone, and a constitutional way of life is something fanciful. We are an oasis. Our constitution is today 75 years old, or may I more rightly say 75 years young. I think all of us can be legitimately proud of this achievement. The centennial volume, 14th Amendment, edited by Professor Bernard Sports, contains an article, Landmarks of Legal Liberty by Justice William Brennan, in which that great judge writes, in the service of the age-old dream for recognition of the equal and inalienable rights of man, the 14th Amendment, though 100 years old, can never be old. So too, our Constitution and the court always tried in majesty with youthful vigor. However old they may be, they will never be old. They should and they will endure. As the stars that are starry in times of darkness, they would be light and remain. The constitutional experiments in India may be said to be a saga of statesmanship, hope, and faith. There were sublime moments. There were also times of anguish, distress, and turmoil. But the overall response of the Indian state to the democratic aspirations of our people and the urges of Indian nationalism has been one of great satisfaction. A constitution mirrors the hopes and expectations of a people. Its interpretation impacts the life of a nation and the people. It is by judicial interpretation that many a time you breathe life into the constitution. And here comes the importance of the courts and the judicial process. The court's fidelity to the constitution secures its own subordination, but fidelity and creativity are not necessarily antagonistic. With devoted insight, they may enhance one another. While there may be no unanimity on the scope and limits of judicial power, there's no gainsaying that it is critically essential as long as it does not breach the embankments. The genius is to find the limits. Constitutional law is an intersection of law and politics in the noble sense, and constitutional adjudication is always an act of statesmanship. The Supreme Court took great strides in the development of our constitutional law. The great theme in the history of our constitutional law is the concept of law as a check upon public power. That idea was given practical reality in the decisions of the court. Those decisions are, to paraphrase the language of Justice Holmes, a virtual magic mirror in which we see reflected our whole constitutional development and all that it has meant to the nation. There are indeed many decisions which are commendable and trailblazing, carrying the law forward, translating constitutional phrase into reality, making it more meaningful for the people, enforcing the checks and balances in the constitutional scheme, and legal control of government and public authorities. It is startling to imagine what would have been the position if these cases had not come up before the court and not been decided as they were. Great judges molded the law and took it forward, most of the time, slowly, cautiously, and step by step. But they were truly revolutionary changes. Some of the momentous decisions established a new principle or gave the law a new emphasis or direction and impacted the life of the people and the nation. And some even influenced juristic thought and jurisprudential trends in other jurisdictions. A study and assessment of such important decisions of the Supreme Court is timely. However, there are also decisions which may not have brought glory to the court. This is inevitable, for every institution is human and errors cannot be avoided. We cannot overlook that also when we take a look at the court's journey and its impact on the nation. The evolution of constitutional law is ultimately facilitated by those who argue constitutional cases, those who decide constitutional issues, and those who critically assess and comment on them. Critical legal literature is undoubtedly of great assistance in presenting a true and coherent picture of the law, while decided cases by themselves may appear as a wilderness of single instances. The purpose of critical writing, it is said, is for subjecting the judicial power to the restraints of reason, of skeptical analysis, of philosophic inquiry. Criticism is essentially a method of appreciation, as Lord Radcliffe remarked. Some criticism may be justified, some criticism may be mistaken, but criticism is essential and can never be abandoned. If criticism is found to be correct, the cause of finding a correct and clear picture of the law is served. If not, the process of discovery of the mistakes and the correct position would serve the cause no less, remarked the indomitable Homi Sirva. Judges tend the gate between order and anarchy. The role and contribution of the judiciary, particularly the apex court, has been impressive. The judgment of the Indian people will be that their constitutional rights are safe in the hands of the court, though on occasions the court might have erred and not lived up to the trust and expectations of the people, and its judgment might have run counter to the better judgment of the community. At the end of the day, in spite of some ups and downs, some well-meaning and well-justified criticisms, what was said by Chief Justice Hughes of the American Supreme Court: the Republic endures, and this is the Supreme Court, is the symbol of our faith, truly applies in full measure to our Supreme Court as well. It is indeed a matter of great joy and satisfaction that we have a galaxy of luminaries for the book launch, both the dignitaries who would speak as well as in the audience. And interestingly, as Mr. Srish Chandra said, we have the 25th Chief Justice of India and the 50th Chief Justice of India. Esteemed Justice Dhananjay Chandrachud, Dhananjay or Dhan, as his revered father used to refer to him when he spoke or wrote to me, and whose friendship I have always enjoyed and fondly cherished, and whose erudition and achievement I deeply admire, has graciously agreed to be the chief guest and release the book. I am deeply beholden to you. Venerable Justice Venkatachaliah, I have had the good fortune of knowing him since my days as a law student. He has been a master at whose feet I have learned. I continue to be his student. He has kindled in me interest in things beyond the mundane and set my imagination on fire. He has been the moving spirit and prime inspiration for this book as well. It is at his bidding that I undertook this venture. He has blessed the work with his foreword, as indeed he has done for all my works. I'm extremely happy and grateful that he is presiding over this function. Thank you, sir. Justice Raveendran and I come from the same illustrious chamber of Sri Sundar Swami of revered memory. He has always been like an elder brother with a kind word and a supporting hand, and we always turn to him for encouragement. I am delighted he is with us as the guest of honor and to speak at today's function. Thank you, sir. I have had the privilege of knowing the learned Attorney General, Sri Venkataramani, for decades now, and have always received nothing but kindness and benevolence from him. He has kindly written an insightful introduction to the book. I must express my joy and gratitude for that, and also for his gracious presence as a guest of honor and to speak at this evening's function. Thank you, sir. I must also acknowledge my sincere indebtedness to the respected Sri Venugopal, the former Attorney General, who has graciously written a note of appreciation for the book. The publishers, Oakbridge, deserve all praise and gratitude. I am sincerely indebted to them for bringing out this work with efficiency and elegance. And finally, I must express my gratitude to all those who have joined this book launch event, because without your presence, this would be a futile exercise. We need to constantly remind ourselves that the Constitution, our treasured inheritance, which we have to cherish, is presently in our keeping, that we at once, its servants and its masters, renew and maintain our allegiance to the fundamental charter. On an occasion like this, the jubilee of the Constitution, we can have no better wish than that the spirit of the Constitution animates our beings and its light illumines all our thoughts, words, and deeds. The journey of the world's largest democracy, its foundational document, our Constitution, and the Supreme Court expounding the meaning and content has been truly fascinating. This book is a humble endeavor to present all this. May I now request the esteemed Justice Dhananjay Chandrachud to do the honors of releasing the book.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for unveiling the book.
Thank you for giving me the honor, Sudhish. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. As we proceed with the evening, it is my honor to introduce our guest of honor, Mr. R. Venkataramani, Senior Advocate and the Attorney General for India. He is one of the most erudite and astute lawyers of India, dealing in matters as varied as constitutional law, environment law, taxation, tribal rights, and child and women's rights. He has represented several state governments, the union government, universities, and public sector undertakings. As a former member of the Law Commission of India, Mr. Venkataramani has completed over 4 decades of practice in the Supreme Court. I invite Mr. Venkataramani to address the gathering.
It's a very special evening for me, besides a special evening for my dear friend Sudhish Pai. It's special in the sense that I stand, though virtually, in the presence of a banyan tree of Indian law and jurisprudence, Justice Venkatachaliah, and a banyan tree in the making, Justice Dhananjay Chandrachud. And then we have Justice Raveendran, who was one of the most erudite judges who made several branches of law different while he was in the court. And then I find large number of learned sisters and brothers in the bar and judges. And what more treat Sudhish Pai can have? A virtual treat, though, but a treat very real. And to be asked to say something about the book in the presence of this, what we usually call the galaxy of the people who are assembled here. I think galaxy is a very small word. Sudhish Pai deserves something very big, because he's like a tree which is evergreen and which never sheds its dry leaves, and the leaves never go dry because of the tree of knowledge. And like a Kalpavriksha, right? Is a Kalpavriksha himself. So when he landed his book on my lap to write an introduction, I asked him, do I have a pen to write an introduction to your book? I must probably design a pen which can capture all the wealth of your knowledge and the crystallization you made of 70 years of the Supreme Court of India and our parliamentary democracy. I had several doubts. I continued to stay in that doubtful mood, even though I have penned an introduction to him. Therefore, today I stand like a squirrel and trying to understand this wonderful contribution given unto our hands by Mr. Sudhish Pai and flanked by a very, very noble foreword by Justice Venkatachaliah. Now, Sudhish Pai referred to the endurance of the Constitution subject written by Ginsburg and all that. Now, we are all always troubled by histories of constitutions not enduring. And therefore, to write about the endurance of a constitution, not only from the point of view what the role courts have played in shaping the constitution, I think we look beyond the role of the courts. And that's where the Sudhish Pai book comes in so beautifully to tell us that not merely the court, not merely the parliament, not merely the executive, but all of us put together, alongside we the people of India, make the constitution what's called a formative constitution and a transformative constitution, and a constitution which becomes dear to our heart. So when you begin to talk about genre of literature like this, I wish I had a scripted talk today, but I thought instead of a scripted talk, let me try to pour something out of my heart where I understand what we need to talk about the genre of literature like this. When you look at the contributions made about the US constitutional history and recent European constitutional history, look at what we are trying to do in India. I think it's important that we celebrate books like this as not merely what we call showcases for our constitutional history, but invitations for a rich harvest of intellectual understanding and intellectual sharing. And I'm sure that we will have many more such contributions from Sudhish Pai to come. And if only he permits, we can probably add some footnotes here and there to be part of a wonderful journey, which he will share with us. I would like to only conclude by saying that I remember today we had a ceremonial bench in the Supreme Court. And I had on my hands the introduction, the speech made by Dr. Ambedkar in 1948, when he introduced the Constitutional Assembly, the draft constitution, and the speech made by him in 1949. What a wonderful speeches they were. You look at it, the prophetic way in which he outlined how this constitution will have endurance. So we are talking today after 75 years of that wonderful thought process and the visionary ideas of Dr. Ambedkar. I think, another 75 years from today, we'll be talking about the visionary engagements of the constitution makers and the visionary doctrines and wonderful thoughts which our Supreme Court has bestowed to us for a long period of time. Each judge, chief judges, judge after judge, laboring under the what called the burdens of making the constitution live and then meaningful to the citizens and the community. What a noble job it is. And to capture the chronicles of this noble job in such a few pages of a book like this, I think is also a very difficult job. I think I deeply appreciate from the bottom of my heart Sudhish Pai for having done this very condensed way of 75 years, like a beautiful what called lens before us. I'm so happy to be part of this evening today. And as I said, we will cherish this evening, not only for the launch of the book, but that we are here today as citizens of this country, alongside great and noble judges, that we are ever in need of such genre of literature, which will keep reinforcing our commitment and great faith in the Constitution of India and constitutional values. Thank you, Mr. Sudhish Pai, for calling me today evening. And I pray my great respects to the honorable judges who are here and my friends, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for your insightful reflections and talking about the endurance of our Constitution and the hope with which we can live that it is continuing to endure and it will endure for the next several years from here on. It is my honor to introduce our guest of honor, Honorable Mr. Justice R.V. Raveendran. Honorable Justice Raveendran was appointed as the Judge of the Supreme Court in 2005 after serving as the Chief Justice of High Court of Madhya Pradesh. During his tenure at the Supreme Court, Justice Raveendran has been part of several landmark judgments on constitutional law, reservation, and education. After his retirement, Justice Raveendran was appointed to the Lodha Committee to reform the Board of Control for Cricket in India. It is my privilege to invite Honorable Mr. Justice R.V. Raveendran to say a few words.
Good evening, Revered Justice M.N. Venkatachaliah ji, beloved Justice Dhananjay Chandrachud, Mr. Venkataramani, Attorney General, the judges, former and present judges of high courts, senior advocates and members of the bar, the directors of Oakbridge, Mr. Sudhish Pai, the distinguished author, ladies and gentlemen. I am very happy to participate in the release of the book, 75 Years of the Constitution, Supreme Court's Role in Promoting Constitutionalism by Mr. Sudhish Pai. Mr. Shirish Chandra referred to a coincidence of the 25th Chief Justice of India and 50th Chief Justice of India participating in this function. I have one or two more coincidences to refer to about them. Several articles and books have appeared to celebrate and commemorate the 75 years of the Constitution. Among these, two stand out. The first is a compilation of articles brought out by the Supreme Court itself, that is, Justice for the Nation, Reflections on 75 Years of Supreme Court of India, released by the President on 5/11/2024. And the second is the book by Sudhish Pai, which has been released today by Justice Chandrachud. It so happens that the first book was inspired and suggested and prompted by Justice Dhananjay Chandrachud. And the second book, which was released today, was inspired, suggested, and prompted by Justice M.N. Venkatachaliah. It is therefore a matter of joy that Sudhish Pai's book is being released by Justice Dhananjay Chandrachud in the august presence of Justice M.N. Venkatachaliah and, of course, the other dignitaries. And I consider these two Chief Justices as two great living exponents of the Constitution as judges of the Supreme Court of India. Both Justice Venkatachaliah and Justice Chandrachud have so far spoken only through their judgments and have not chosen to pen their thoughts and views on matters relating to Constitution or law. It is time that their writings and lectures are compiled and published to inspire the people of the country. I have wished time and again that two series of writings should be compiled in the form of books to provide great reads. Of course, one is not about law at all. I refer to the famous obituary page of economists, which constantly entertain, stimulate, and sometimes surprise the reader. The second is the numerous forewords and introductions by Justice Venkatachaliah, each of which has an aside containing the words of wisdom and ideas of Justice Venkatachaliah. My first wish in regard to economists was fulfilled by economists coming out with a book of obituaries, a compilation of the last page articles in Economists. In regard to the second, I request Sudhish to next take up the task of editing and publishing the forewords, introductions, and articles of Justice Venkatachaliah. Of course, Sudhish, you can remove the references to the authors and the books and only take the essence of the introductions and forewords and create a book out of it. Such a compilation would provide a glimpse of the thought-provoking ideas and views and matters relating to laws and world affairs. Justice Chandrachud has written a record number of erudite judgments which have changed the course of constitutional law in India. Unfortunately, laymen do not read judgments. In fact, the developing trend is even lawyers read only those portions containing the ratio of the judgments or the operative part only for the purpose of citing it for some other case. Justice Chandrachud should therefore now start bringing out compilation of his articles apart from publishing writings on issues relating to Constitution and law. May I say, following the footsteps of not his father, but his two illustrious sons, to develop the constitutional culture of the country. The study and understanding of the Constitution, its principles, its values, its culture, its morality require, more often than not, the guiding hand of an expert adept at interpreting, explaining, propounding the provisions of the Constitution. The study of Constitution is similar to the study of, I would say, Bhagavad Gita. If an uninitiated glances through the words of the Gita or the words of the Constitution, he or she may not be able to appreciate, understand, and follow the values flowing therefrom. The guidance of a guru in the case of Bhagavad Gita and the guidance of a constitutional scholar in the case of Constitution is necessary, as they can, by their interpretation and exposition, enable laymen to learn, appreciate, and follow their values. Mr. Sudhish Pai is one of the very few experts and commentators in constitutional law in India who can explain the Constitution and its principles succinctly but simply. His book, 75 Years of the Constitution, explains the basic concepts of Constitution, its culture and morality, and encapsulates the ratio and substance of the most important decisions of the Supreme Court in the field of constitutional law. Yes, as Justice Venkatachaliah points out in his foreword, captured in a page or two the facts and ratio of the judgments running into hundreds and thousands of pages. President Woodrow Wilson, I remember, said, when asked about the time required by him to prepare his speeches, if I am to speak for 10 minutes, I need a week for preparation. If it is half an hour, I require 2 days. And if it is an hour, I am ready now. Similarly, enormous effort and expertise was required to squeeze in a page or two the essence of groundbreaking constitutional law judgments. Sudhish, with his encyclopedic knowledge of these decisions, aided by his sharp memory and hard work, has summarized nearly 100 important decisions of the Supreme Court, capturing their essence. I'm sure that the book would be of use not only for those in the field of law, but also laymen to understand the Constitution and also understand the contribution of the Supreme Court in interpreting and giving shape to the vision of the Constitution. It is a book that should be read by everyone interested in the rule of law and constitutional democracy. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for sharing your valuable insights. I think a key takeaway for all of us is that studying the Constitution requires somebody to explain, to interpret, and to expand on what is written in the plain language in the Constitution. Thank you so much, sir. It is my proud privilege to introduce our chief guest, Honorable Dr. Justice D.Y. Chandrachud. Honorable Justice Chandrachud served as the 50th Chief Justice of India, and under his leadership, the Supreme Court saw impactful reforms. Owing to his pioneering efforts in ensuring live streaming of proceedings in all courts and tribunals across the country, today, laypersons and legal experts can access courts proceedings anywhere. Justice Chandrachud has numerous judgments to his credit, each contributing to a legacy that will continue to influence Indian law. It is my honor to now invite Honorable Dr. Justice D.Y. Chandrachud to grace this occasion with a few words.
Thank you. Namaskar. Revered Justice Venkatachaliah, former Chief Justice of India, Shri Justice R.V. Raveendran, distinguished former Judge of the Supreme Court, Chief Justice Devendra Kumar Upadhyay, Chief Justice of the Delhi High Court and judges of the High Court, both present and past, Shri R. Venkataramani, Attorney General for India, Shri V. Sudhish Pai, Senior Advocate, distinguished senior members of the bar and other lawyers who are present here, Shri Shri Chandra, founder of Oakbridge Publishing, Shri Vikas Dhyani, co-founder, and everyone who is present this evening on this occasion. I'm beholden to my dear and erudite friend Sudhish Pai for giving me this unique honor to release this book to mark the 75 years of the Constitution and speak on the occasion. Sudhish has presented us with the opportunity to bond together on a very special evening. The presence of two of the greatest judges to have graced the bench of the Supreme Court in independent India, Chief Justice M.N. Venkatachaliah and Justice R.V. Raveendran, underscores the momentous nature of the occasion. The diversity of the areas which they navigated with their judicial pen and through their judicial journey is a beacon of light for judges who have followed, including me personally. The search for truth has reflected down the ages an eternal quest and yearning of humanity. This quest has sustained times of peace and prosperity. The search has also been used to justify violence and war by those who propound a hegemony of truth. The search in constitutional democracies is for truth which encapsulates the spirit of the people, against which laws made by representatives of the people can be tested. What emerges from this quest, however, is not a distilled truth or a singular truth, but instead a dialogue informed by experiences. The quest for a single abiding truth is replaced by an acceptance of multiple truths and manifold identities. The Constitution of India is a dialogue between the people of India. The dialogue speaks to the past, refashions the present, and invokes the future. The oft-quoted observation of Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes that the life of the law has not been logic, it has been experience, must, for us in India, reflect an experiential understanding of social truth, the acceptance of a multiplicity of truths which illuminate the path to a humane society. These paths may traverse a road widely traveled, as well as the road less traveled. Neither can be dismissed as heresy in a constitutional order which sustains a free society, which idealizes the ideal of a universally free people. Our Constitution has been shaped by the experiences of Indians of all stripes, communities, and thinking. The tension between competing ideas of the nation churned out a gold standard which combines idealistic goals on the one hand and realistic means to achieve them in the backdrop of a society which has been patriarchal and discriminatory towards swathes of marginalized segments in our society. The beauty of our Constitution was encapsulated by Granville Austin, who described it as intending to spark a social revolution through peaceful and democratic means. While the Constitution of India illuminates India's path of eschewing from a hierarchical and prejudicial society, its working has thrown open complex practical and interpretative challenges over 75 years. To endure in ailing times, the Supreme Court of India has kept the Constitution alive by delivering on its role as a custodian of the Constitution. Courts are informed by the daily interaction of common people with the working of the Constitution. A people's Constitution has been worked upon by the People's Court, which the Supreme Court essentially is, to produce a unique catharsis. The healing power of the Constitution lies in its ability to include rather than exclude, to accept pluralism in preference to homogeneity, and to accept multifarious identities grounded in ideology, gender, caste, religion, region, and geography. People speak through the courts when they seek justice against illegal detention, demolitions, discrimination, and exclusion. Every now and then, the bar creates giants from amongst its members who articulate these experiences and breathe life into law. India's robust constitutional culture has created giants like Dr. Durgadas Basu, Nani Palkhiwala, H.M. Sirvai, Soli Sorabji, Fali Nariman, Ashok Desai, and so many more. V. Sudhish Pai is among the contemporary constitutional scholars which the bar has gifted to the courts and in turn to the Constitution of India. Sudhish has the brilliance of articulating what many Indians feel but cannot verbalize. He makes accessible those ideas which confound many students of the Constitution. His sheer brilliance is reflected in the authorship of 7 books, which I have come across in innumerable articles of contemporary relevance. From the history of Sri Kashimath and Guru Parampara to the legions in the law and scholarly literature on the Constitution and constitutional law, the diversity which his pen encompasses is mind-boggling. Even a deeming fiction will allow the mind to boggle when confronted with Sudhish's brilliance. Sudhish sets himself apart from many others by critically examining the topic which he undertakes to study. In the book which we released today, 75 Years of the Constitution, Sudhish has traveled beyond outlining significant constitutional cases which have promoted constitutionalism in India. He has interspersed critical and occasionally unfavorable commentary on the role of the Supreme Court. In part A of the book, there is a chapter on critical imperatives for the better working of the Constitution. In this chapter, Sudhish puts forth a compelling case to free the dialogue in Parliament from the misunderstood anti-defection law so that the executive can be held more accountable. Chief Justice M.N. Venkatachaliah began that journey in Quixote of Holohan when he expounded on the 10th schedule. Sudhish also argues for introducing Prime Minister's question time, robust and consistent debates, and committee deliberations in Parliament for lawmaking, and the formation of a Constitution Committee of Parliament to deal with amendments to the Constitution. In particular, I resonate with Sudhish's assessment that it is imperative to raise the level of political discourse in parliamentary debates. As Chief Justice of India, I would frequently point out the necessity of statesmanship between constitutional functionaries in the discharge of their duties. We miss out on the promise of the Constitution when a government re-promulgates ordinances without placing them before the legislature, or the governor refuses to decide on the fate of a bill which has been duly passed by the legislature, or when parliamentarians derelict in their duty to transform polarizing and raw public discussion into refined deliberative discourse. Trenchant intellectual analysis of these timely concerns is rare in the world of bite-sized social media summaries. Social media is bereft both of time and tolerance, both of which Sudhish has devoted in ample measure. In an evolving world with shortened attention spans and increasing polarization, books like the one written by Sudhish allow us to engage with imminent and pressing issues with a fearless and solution-oriented mindset. We are also witnessing a silent but steady shift in India's constitutional trend. Our times are being marked by evolving federalism, calls for environmental and economic democracy, and a renewed emphasis on safeguarding individual rights to meet the demands of our impatient younger generation. When it comes to federalism and economic democracy, the Supreme Court has recently delivered a spate of judgments on unsettled questions of law which have been pending for decades. The issue of tax on mineral royalty, the power to regulate industrial alcohol, and the ability of the government to take control of private property as a material resource of the community have gained a more nuanced understanding after the implementation of the goods and services tax regime ushered in by the 122nd Amendment. In these cases, the Supreme Court has emphasized on the ability of the people to follow the economic philosophy which serves the need of their times without being bound by the circumstances of the past. Similarly, Climate change has caused devastating natural disasters in the form of fires, unpredictable weather patterns, the failing of crops, and the flooding which claimed innocent lives of ordinary citizens, not only in India, but across the world. This has allowed the courts to interpret the environmental rule of law as an overarching ethic of governance. Environmental democracy has come to be understood under our Constitution as an imperative for our citizens to be in constant deliberation with the state and to be able to make informed decisions which may have serious consequences to our environmental health. The changing nature of our communities is also reflected in the changing nature of our focus on individual rights. The advent of artificial intelligence has caused considerable excitement at the prospect of a more modern, enterprising, and accessible world. But this has also caused renewed worries about privacy in the digital and data realm. As our neighbors, mentors, mentees, siblings, and children find more agency to be authentic and expressive, we have also evolved our understanding of LGBTQ+ rights. A community which was systematically effaced under pain of a penal provision has today been dignified under the Constitution. The right to self-determination, of chosen families, and of safe cohabitation have all been recognized within the last decade. A critical area where the Supreme Court has erred to deliver on the promise of the Constitution is by refusing to recognize any form of union between LGBTQ+ couples. Justice John Marshall Harlan, the great dissenter of Plessy versus Ferguson, had written in 1896 that the sure guarantee of the peace and security of each class is the clear, distinct, unconditional recognition by our governments of every right that inheres in civil freedom and of the equality before the law of all citizens. But if history is witness to any truth, it is that the arc of the moral universe bends towards justice. The Supreme Court is not final because it is right. Often, it is deemed right only because it is final. I have faith in the endurance of our nation and its 75 years young Constitution to find within them a place for enduring relationships of all Indians who ask only for their relations to be dignified in law in the same manner as their right-bearing partners across the nation. Constitutionalism is not an abstract body of principles for the moral governance of a nation and her people. It is a spirit enlivened by the toil of a people. Sudhish, in your book, you have captured 75 years of the dialogue between the people of India and their Supreme Court with a remarkable length of just 295 pages. May this book encourage more members of the bar, especially the young members of the bar, to critically engage with the subject that circulates the blood flow of our nation. Heartiest congratulations, my dear friend Sudhish. As you have rightly written in your book, this work is for all those who have plowed the lonely furrow of scholarship and kept the silver lamp of learning trim and bright, and to those who will carry the torch forward with its radiant vestal flame and help in fostering a constitutional culture. Your book really is the auspicious sesame oil to keeping the light of the Constitution burning bright for all times. Thank you very much again for having me here and for inviting me.
Thank you, sir, for sharing your thoughts with us. It has certainly left us all with much to ponder. It is my honor to introduce Honorable Mr. Justice M.N. Venkatachaliah. Honorable Justice Venkatachaliah served as the 25th Chief Justice of India. Throughout his tenure at the Supreme Court, he was committed to reducing the pendency of cases and making the judiciary more and more accountable. He was conferred the Padma Vibhushan in 2004 for his distinguished and exceptional contribution to the Indian judiciary. It is my privilege to invite Honorable Mr. Justice M.N. Venkatachaliah, sir, to address the gathering.
esteemed former Chief Justice of India, Justice D.Y. Chandrachud, Justice R.V. Raveendran, the Attorney General Sri Venkataramani, Sri Chandra, Sri Vikesh Jani of Oak Ridge, the author is Sudhish Pai. Ladies and gentlemen, I have known Sudhish Pai ever since he was a student, and he used to sit in my court, and I had marked him out even then. Acclaimed as a legal philosopher with impeccable scholastic credentials and professional sense of rectitude and faith in the judicial process, he turned away from the professional rewards, devoting himself to throwing the lonely furrow of scholarship, keeping the silver lamp of learning trim and bright. This book is a jurist tribute to the evolution of the Constitution and the creative role of the Supreme Court of India. Publishers deserve our gratitude. The cases are chosen with great editorial wisdom and bear testimony to the genius of the great court. William Witt, the former Attorney General, in his tribute to the creative role of the Supreme Court of the United States of America, said that it is easier to speak of the solar system without the sun than speak of the American Constitution without the doctrine of the supremacy of the Supreme Court of the United States. What does this doctrine of supremacy really mean? It does not certainly mean an amorphous general supervision of government. Legal control of government is not judges' control of government. John Chipman Gray, in his Nature and Sources of the Law, said, whoever had an absolute authority to interpret any written or spoken law, it is he who is truly the lawgiver to all intents and purposes, and not the person who first wrote or spoke them. The making of the Indian Constitution was a historic event of global significance. The second half of the 20th century was known for the upsurge of democratic spirit globally. The debates of the Constitutional Assembly by the framers of the Constitution reached spiritual heights. The framers of the Constitution were so deeply concerned about the safety and progress of the future generations that they were determined to protect them against the scourge of communalism and violence. And violence seen in the aftermath of the partition, which left a deep scar. The Constitution represents the best in our past, reflects the hopes and aspirations of the present, and a flexibility to respond effectively to the needs of the future. It is the vehicle of a nation's progress. The Constitution does not work by itself. It needs the machinery of the common law, legislation, and constitutional conventions. Its provisions are not interpreted in any narrow pedantic sense. There is in its diction a sense of purposeful vagueness so as to enable its language to unfold ever greater meanings and content to meet the uncertain demands of the future and promote imaginative statesmanship. Ladies and gentlemen, our Constitution has accommodated great and sweeping social economic changes. There is a special quality in the change ushered through the judicial process. There is a difference between changes brought by formal amendments of the Constitution and changes brought by judicial interpretation. Nation lives, grows, and expands. Its social and economic conditions change, demanding changes in the rigid constitutional framework. The judicial process responding to these needs moves by gradual, often indirect, cautious, and well-considered steps. subtly enabling the past to join the future without undue collision. That is the creative genius of the Indian Supreme Court, in which it gave new meaning to the old words appropriate to the demands of the changing times. Fixed words of the Constitution are interpreted to suit the demands of the changing times. Average age of a Constitution, it is said, is 19 years. We are 75 years old and growing strong. The making of the Indian Constitution was a highly emotional event. It was the expression of the will of a great people, grimly struggling to be reborn as an egalitarian modern industrial society from the feudal beginning. The Western press wondered as to how 330 million uneducated, mostly rustic people could manage the sophistications of a parliamentary democracy as a republican model. But the same press later acknowledged the strength and the viability of the Indian Constitution and the spirit of constitutionalism that was nurtured. India's GDP was a mere $10 billion in 1948. Now it stands at 3.89 trillion. However, India's true wealth lies in its people and their spiritual culture and cultural heritage. Their invaluable contribution in the field of art, architecture, literature, music, dance, drama, philosophy that add savor to life itself. The world is slowly coming around to recognize the significance of this wealth and richness and of the human quality. Democracy is the most inspiring and wondrous product of the collective genius of human mind. Democracy is the most inspiring and wondrous product of the collective genius of the human mind. It is to a nation what oxygen is to the individual. It is not a perfect system, but it is the least hostile amongst all other systems tried so far. Winston Churchill eloquently captured the essence of democratic process when he spoke of the little man walking into a little booth with a little pencil, making a little cross on a little bit of paper. That concluded that no amount of rhetoric or voluminous discussion can possibly diminish the overwhelming importance of this point. Cure for the problems of democracy is more democracy. Justice Joseph Story, reckoned as the most learned judge, acclaimed for his academic scholarship, referring to the inspiring words of the American preamble, the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, said, surely no object could be more worthy of the wisdom and ambition of the best men of any age. There is anything which may justly challenge the admiration of all mankind, it is that sublime patriotism which, looking beyond its own time and its own fleeting pursuits, aims to secure the permanent happiness of posterity by laying the broad foundations of government upon immovable and principles of justice. There is a noble disinterestedness in that forecast, which disregards present objects for the sake of all mankind and erects structures to protect, support, and bless the most distant generation, such as the sentiments that have inspired constitutional interpretation. In 1986, a non-governmental committee on the constitutional system reviewed the performance of the American government and produced the document reforming the American government. They began with the observation that the political history of America presented a paradox. They said, on the one hand, it has been strikingly conservative. The Constitution drafted in 1787 and ratified the following year is the oldest written constitution of all time, during the 2 centuries of our existence, they said, as an independent nation, Great Britain did evolve from a constitutional monarchy to a classic bicameral parliamentary government to a modern prime ministerial state. The United States, meanwhile, has retained its basic form intact, including a bicameral legislature of equal branches and a separation of executive and the legislative powers. This system has come to be regarded by the American people virtually as a given. On the other hand, Americans have been remarkably innovative in their approach to political institution building. In the production of this document, they refer to the writings of Thomas Jefferson, who said, "I'm certainly not an advocate for frequent and untried changes in the laws and the Constitution, but I know also that laws and institutions must go hand in hand with progress of the human mind. As that becomes more developed, more enlightened, as new discoveries are made, new truths are disclosed, and manners and opinions change with the change of circumstances, institutions must advance also and keep pace with the changing time." 75 years of the Constitution represents a spiritual journey of a great people in a great movement of a great population, the butchers, the bakers, and the candlestick makers. After the death of Abraham Lincoln, a political commentator cynically remarked that the era of giants is over. The political scene, he said, is peopled with charlatans, quick work artists, and from the muddled mediocre to the dangerously deranged. But a great country and a great people can survive such cynicism, not succumb to agnosticism and worship doubt. Thus are those who create a festive air and can, in the words of Jonathan Swift, grow two blades of glass where one grew and deserve the better of mankind. As the great Buddha, in his ripe old age, took leave of the pleasant city of Vaisali. As the great Buddha, in his ripe old age, took leave of the pleasant city of Vaishali, he rested on its hills, overlooking its pleasant scenery, with many sanctuaries and shrines, and expressed his joy. Chitram Jambu Dvipam, Manoharam Jivatam Manushwanam. Colorful and rich is India, lovable and charming is the life of man. So this realization of the great ideal of collective happiness, let Indian collective consciousness move. Thank you very much for your kindness and patience. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for your words of wisdom. Thank you so much. I now invite Mr. Vikesh Dhyani, co-founder and director, Oakbridge Publishing, to propose the vote of thanks.
Thank you, Priyanka. Venerable Justice M.N. Venkatachaliah, Honorable Dr. Justice D.Y. Chandrachud, Honorable Justice R.V. Raveendran, Mr. R. Venkataramani, Mr. Sudhish Pai, and my colleague Srish Chandra, and all our other distinguished attendees, including honorable judges, eminent jurists, scholars, and members from the bar, who've taken time out to grace this special book launch event with their august presence today. Many thanks to all of you. It has truly been an honor and a privilege to hear all our distinguished and erudite speakers today on the momentous occasion of 75 years of the Constitution and Supreme Court of India. On behalf of the entire Oakbridge Publishing team, I would like to convey our sincere thanks and gratitude to all our eminent speakers today for enlightening and inspiring us with their immense knowledge and deeply enriching thoughts. At Oakbridge Publishing, we aspire to be the strong bridge between knowledge creators and knowledge seekers, with the broader purpose of promoting the rule of law. We feel proud and humbled to have played our small part in archiving some momentous occasions from the history of Supreme Court and its role in shaping the Indian Constitution through this well-researched book by Mr. Pai. To quote the legendary senior advocate and former Attorney General for India, Mr. K.K. Venugopal, Sudhish Pai's book is a fascinating read for anyone interested in the voyage of the foundational document of the world's largest democracy. I am sure this book will continue to enlighten the present and future generations and will serve as a beacon of hope, trust, and confidence for one and all in our constitution and judiciary for years to come. I would encourage all our esteemed guests to read this book and benefit from Mr. Sudhish Pai's meticulous research and scholarly writing. The book is available at all leading law bookstores and also on Amazon and our Oakbridge website. With that, I thank you all once again and wish you a wonderful evening ahead. Thank you so much.
Thank you all. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. With that, we conclude today's book release event. I thank you, everybody who made the time to come here and participate. This book stands as a tribute to India's constitutional journey, and we hope that it will spark further discussions on the judiciary's role in shaping the nation's legal landscape. Wishing you all a very wonderful evening, and thank you once again.